But some take it a step further and actually defend Xsmart Global. And one of the biggest content creators to have ever done this was Uhyeah. On his second channel, Uhyeah Gaming, he made 2 videos discussing the Youtooz Xsmart controversy. And while most of them give a basic rundown of what happened, there are many things that are stated throughout the videos that are questionable at best, or just flat out bad. First things first, Uhyeah simply just didn't do a lot of research for both videos. In the first video, he goes over the original DMCA from Youtooz. What he forgets to mention and seemingly overlooks is that this does cause a market confusion. As I've already gone over, Youtooz are some of the only people making plushies of the withered animatronics. So of course to an average consumer, when they see a plushie like Xsmart's, that not only seems like it's good quality, but most importantly, was the first thing that pops up when you look up Fnaf withered plushies on Amazon, and when it arrives, since Xsmart has a fairly similar looking bag to Yootooz's, with all these designs and collectibles logo under the name, it's very much possible that a customer buys it and doesn't realize that it's a bootleg, which is essentially a market confusion. If Uhyeah simply just looked this up on Amazon while researching, this DMCA would make sense. In his second video, he also fails at researching, and as stated by Uhyeah, he doesn't actually know if Austin accused Xsmart of using child labor.
Where they brought up the fact that apparently the CEO of Youtooz accused Xsmart of using child labor services to produce their plushies. I'm not even sure where this claim was specifically made. I don't think it matters that much either, because this whole story has become much bigger than just that. But I mean, I don't know where the claim was made, but I mean, Xsmart seemed to want to respond to it pretty bad, because they made multiple tweets about this, so I'm assuming it's real. But because I don't know where it actually came from, I'm gonna say allegedly. Maybe Xsmart's just high off their shit, but I'm pretty sure this is real. The claims.
This is just irresponsible, because if you actually look at what Austin said, this just can't be considered an accusation. At worst, I'd say Austin really shouldn't have said this, but at the end of the day, Austin is allowed to speculate just like everyone else. Because theoretically, if we're going off the same mentality with the rest of his comments, did Austin also accuse Xsmart Global of using lead in their products? No, he simply just brought it up as a possibility. To bring up a quick example, just look at the Skylanders bootlegs. One of the biggest rumors surrounding these products is that they contain lead. And well, they're bootlegs. Does that mean that every bootleg has lead? No, but it's fair to question if it does. At the end of the day, companies like Xsmart Global are already willing to cut corners on certain things. So, in my opinion, I think it's fair to question what other things the company are willing to do. And that's exactly what Austin did. Is there a time and place to have these sort of conversations? Definitely. Was the time literally right after your company gets into controversy? No. But Austin did not accuse Xsmart Global of anything. And if Uhyeah simply just put in the time and research this, he would have known. Now let's talk about some of the more strange points he made. First, Uhyeah mentioned that Xsmart is better for the consumers, as it's cheaper as opposed to the more premium collectible brands.
Because some people will say that, you know, but if you buy these plushes or support these plushes, you're not supporting the real withered plushes that support the companies, like, you know, Hex and Youtooz. But obviously those are all premium products that cost a lot of money, and these bootlegs are cheaper. Even if they're probably a little higher, you know, in price for bootlegs, they're still cheaper than the Youtooz and the Hex.
In fairness, Youtooz and the other collectibles plushie maker Hex can be expensive, and I'm perfectly fine with calling them premium products. But I find it strange that Uhyeah doesn't consider Xsmart a premium as well. At the time of Uhyeah's videos releasing, and still to this very day, Xsmart's products go on average for around $20 to $25 to even $30 each. And if we're comparing to something like Youtooz, their products around the time of the videos releasing were around $35. So for all intents and purposes, Xsmart is cheaper than Youtooz, but honestly not by much, being around $10 to $15 cheaper. But regardless of the difference, I'd argue that both products are expensive and are a premium. As a person who's bought in multiple products from Youtooz for that $35 price tag, I can't deny that they are expensive. But there's one major difference. With Youtooz, you're paying that extra because you know you're gonna get a much larger plushie, and are also directly supporting the Fnaf franchise. While with Xsmart, you're paying for a plushie that is the same height as a Funko Fnaf plushie, but is nearly double the price of the Funko version. And all that money generated goes back into the pockets of Xsmart Global, and none of it goes to Scott Coffin. Even then, if you want a cheap Fnaf plushie, there are much cheaper options, like Funko and Jazzwares, who have both proven that they can make good products at a much cheaper price. I understand with this topic specifically, it's kind of complicated since you can also consider all of these a premium, since you don't need to buy any of them. But look, in my opinion, Xsmart Global is a premium product, since it still costs a fairly decent amount to buy, especially when comparing it to the competition. Although you have to understand, he said this to back up a point, in which he states a fairly absurd statement.
So I think their withered collection is really good, but it is illegal and a moral gray area, like, just these plushes existing.
Yeah, because stealing someone's work, making plushies of them, and selling them and not even giving the creator a dime, yeah, that's a moral gray area. This is not only an interesting opinion, but he's also being hypocritical. In his video about Fnaf content farms, he criticizes the channel Top 10 Gaming about how they steal fan art and use it on their banner and thumbnails.
First thing that is blatantly obvious here is that Freddy render is 100% stolen fan art. So after years of this render being used in this banner without credit, well, I say that, but stealing fan art is just a normal occurrence for this channel. There's literally no trying to hide it as well. The thumbnails are riddled with fan art, fan renders, and the videos are much better in that department.
As well, in his video about the OG FNAF YouTuber Smike, he mentioned how Smike had used fan art in his videos without permission, and that it was totally understandable when the original artists were upset.
Many of the artists that Smike had used fan art from ended up getting pretty annoyed with them using their fan art in his videos, which is totally understandable when most of the visual content of said videos consists of that fan art.
So it's bad when these guys steal, but when Xsmart steals, yeah, that's just a moral gray area. You have to remember, the reason why this whole Youtooz Xsmart stuff is happening was because Youtooz were trying to help protect Scott Cawthon's work. It's literally the most important part of the controversy, and yet Uhyeah conveniently enough barely mentions this in his video. He actually spends more time complimenting Xsmart than mentioning why this entire situation even started in the first place. In fact, Uhyeah at the end of his second video criticizes Youtooz for being hypocritical.
Youtooz as a company was literally built on copyright infringement. They started making Ugandan Knuckles figures, which is a design that they did not create on any front, right? Because there's the person who designed Ugandan Knuckles as like a video animation joke, and then there's fucking Sega, you know, the people actually designed Knuckles a character, and neither of those people had anything to do with that. And then they also did a Pepe figure at some point that was taken down because they just didn't ask the guy who made Pepe before they made a fucking figure of it. So Youtooz is not completely innocent of infringing on copyright. Like, they are very guilty of this too.
While I think this is a good point against Youtooz, where is this same energy towards Xsmart? And even then, there's a very big difference between what Youtooz did and what Xsmart did. Yootooz's fuck-ups were back in 2019, when the company was first starting out, and after they were told to stop doing this, they learned until this very day have done everything correct, and make products with the creator's permission. Xsmart Global, on the other hand, have stolen things from Scott Cawthon, got sued, and still to this very day are stealing. Youtooz actually learned, while Xsmart Global, in my opinion, don't care and are still stealing. And now it's Uhyeah's big point. His overall thesis is that it's weird that Youtooz got involved.
I don't know why them specifically are taking these down and not just Scott Cawthon, which would probably be easier, and I don't think anyone would be complaining, because it really feels like petty when it's Youtooz specifically doing it.
I mean, is it though? With Funko on its way out, and Jazzwares just starting out and having some bigger controversies, Youtooz have been the biggest suppliers to work with the series, and when they know what they're doing when it comes to copyrights, are willing to help. And remember, Scott Cawthon is still just one guy, and was already stuck in a lawsuit with Xsmart, and that's not even considering the legal repercussions of directly attacking the people that, you know, he's suing. In my opinion, I think it's at least fair enough to see why Youtooz stepped in. Now look, obviously Uhyeah is allowed to have his own opinion, and if he really thinks that Youtooz getting involved was kinda odd, then that's perfectly fine. However, to back up his point, Uhyeah goes on to state that he thinks Youtooz are jealous of Xsmart.
This comes off to me like the Xsmart bootlegs were selling better than the Youtooz ones because they're cheaper, look better, and they were butthurt by that and decided to strike them. Even though they have nothing to do with the Youtooz plushes at all and are completely different. It really just feels like a petty thing where it's like, even though there's an active lawsuit going on with Scott Cawthon and this company right now, let's just kick them even more. Let's just take these people down even more.
What? Okay, first off, while I'm aware that this was an opinion that Uhyeah had, he has no proof to back up what he's saying, as Youtooz and Xsmart sales numbers aren't public. So why does he think this? I don't mean to be that guy here, but this is just such a childish argument. I'm not saying it's not possible, but when you realize that there's a much more reasonable explanation for why Youtooz helped, it makes a lot more sense. Uhyeah's entire argument is literally just Yootooz's big evil company that hates small underdog Xsmart, when that's just far from the case. The point of this entire section is just to say Uhyeah's videos about Xsmart are bad. He leaves out a lot of context, jumps to conclusions, instead of actually considering more realistic reasoning, and most importantly, barely mentions the root of the actual problem. All of this just sucks to say because, for the most part, I actually like Uhyeah. He's a Skylanders fan, we're practically besties. It's just so strange that Uhyeah has criticized people for stealing and not asking for permission to use certain things, and yet when it comes to Xsmart Global, this is barely mentioned, and paints them out as victims when they really aren't.